Hello, welcome to this live stream with me, Charlotta, and Trisha from Creative Costume Academy. And we're really excited because tonight we're going to share our 3 favorite top beginner projects. And we're going to talk about projects you might like if you're literally just at the beginning of your sewing journey. So you just gotten excited, picked up some nice fabric, or whether you've been sewing for a while and now you're excited to get into pattern cutting, but you not quite know where to start. So we're going to cover all these. We have no idea what each other is going to say.
Yeah,
I think there might be a crossover with some of them, but I'm looking forward to find out what Trisha has to say. Before Trisha introduces herself, if you haven't, could you give us a thumbs up, because that really helps show our live stream to other YouTube viewers. And if you're not subscribed, of course, please subscribe, and also subscribe to Trisha and her handle, as I put in the description. It's Creative Costume Academy. So Trisha, tell people about you if I haven't met you before, please.
Yes. Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Trisha. I call myself your pattern nerd friend. I am all about bringing the joy of pattern making and sewing and taking the stress and the scary part out of learning it, so that we're really having fun and learning how to make cool stuff and really just loving how powerful pattern making is. So I come from a background of costume making, making costumes for big theatrical events like Cirque du Soleil, Blue Man Group, Disney, Broadway shows, that kind of thing. And so that's where my knowledge comes from. Oh, cool. We have a couple of North Carolina people in the house, which is where I live, in the States as well. And yeah, and now I have taken that knowledge and I teach online. We have a free class, which you can try out, my free pattern masterclass, to learn more about my teaching style. And then I'm the lead instructor for the Pattern Making Academy for Mimi G Styles Pattern Making Academy. And then I have my own private membership, which is only open a couple of times a year. But we are all about, in every arena, having fun with making patterns and learning this awesome superpower, because it is so cool and so wonderful. So that's a little bit about me. And Charlotta.
And yeah, I'm from a fashion background, so on the other side of making clothes to Trisha. And I've worked for small London labels, and then I've also taught, which is why I'm so passionate about. I want everybody to make their own clothes, because it's quite noticeable how few people nowadays do. So I want to sort of enable everybody, because it is fun. It's it's really empowering that you have clothes which fit you exactly how you want it. It's also good fun, as Trisha said. It's like something really joyful to your life. You can do a little bit, you can big ones, but I don't think anybody is ever not going to profit from making their own clothes.
Absolutely. It's just cool.
Yes, yeah. Because, like, why wouldn't you? Isn't it? Like, yeah, you can make something with your own hands, isn't it? Like, that's the best thing in life.
I think especially for clothing, I don't know about others, but I mean, what we wear does affect how we show up in the world, and how confident you feel and how comfortable you feel. And for me, it's always been an avenue of expression. For it's very personal to me, like my clothes that I wear, and I think it really has a big effect in how you can show up in your life, and as yourself, more yourself, if you can make things that you really love in a style that you really want to fit you perfectly to boot. So I think that that's really the underlying thing of what makes it so powerful and so wonderful, is that you have that you don't have to rely on what's out there. You can make it exactly what you want, and it can be uniquely yours. Even if you use the same sewing pattern, you can change the fabric that you use, or change a little detail and make it yours. And so that, I think, is really awesome too.
Yeah, no, it makes you just happy, doesn't it? And it makes because I used to love shopping when I was like a teenager. It's nothing better. But I think as the more you learn to make, it's much more exciting to actually buy some nice fabric. I still like shopping, but to make it your own. Or even if you buy something, to actually yeah, I love the fabric, or I love that style, but it's not the shoulders. But you can just fix it and make it really yours, and just yeah, it feels great, and it's also lovely because it's. I've seen Dorothy saying it's really cold in Texas, and hello Laura, because we're in the UK and we've got a cold snap, so it's
Yeah,
just freezing.
we
But it
got
was
a cold hit us the
yeah,
other day, or hit us yesterday too,
yeah,
actually.
yes,
Starting to get cold. I bet it's cold up in Saskatchewan as well, and Quebec. Like,
yes, yes.
is it
God, we really got that freezing. But I put on my winter coat I inherited from my grandmother, and it's basically falling apart. So I put fur collar on, then I put fur cuffs
Oh,
on.
yes.
I've done the whole hem and cuff, and you get so many compliments. It's just really nice when you've made it, and when somebody appreciates it, isn't it? And it's like
Yeah.
you don't. I think if you buy something beautiful and you get compliments, it's nice. But if you made it, it's sort of not just pretty. It's actually you're skillful, isn't it? You can do it.
Yeah, because it's not just complimenting you on something in the
Yeah.
way you look, it's like it's complimenting your skills
Yes.
and what you've done, like something that you've put a lot of time and energy and love into, and you're like, "Oh, thank you for noticing," kind of thing.
Now, so shall we get started? Actually, I put out a poll on Instagram already, a question. I would love
Uh,
to know in the chat as well I know what Laura's beginner project is, but I would love to know maybe what you would recommend to a friend to make first, or
mhm.
what you made first, which really you thought really pushed you into making more, because there's certain project at beginner which can be a bit depressing. So we wanted to avoid that
Yeah.
and give you some which give you an instant lift. So yeah, feel free to put them in the chat, please. I'd love to know them. And of course, feel free to ask us questions as well. And Trisha, do you
Yeah.
want to get us started? And shall we start with a sewing project for beginners?
Yeah, we can start with, so we wanna talk a little bit about sewing and a little bit about pattern making, or pattern cutting, as my UK friends would call it. But yeah, so there's so many different ways that you can go with this. So I really thought, like, the first sewing projects that I was thinking of are accessories, and that's why I chose to wear a couple of the things that I did. The great thing about sewing accessories is usually, and I'm not talking like crazy bags and purses, although that could be a way you could go, but simple things like a headband or a scrunchie, or something small and quick. And the great thing about accessories is that you don't it doesn't necessarily have to fit as well. Like, fitting isn't such a big issue. That's what I was thinking would be a really good starter sewing project. Like, I think when I started in school, we started with like a pillowcase, but I mean, you know, this oddball pillowcase that you
Yes.
have, I mean, I remember I made it. But, so a pillowcase is fun, but isn't I always wanna make something that I can wear or I
Like
can
somebody
use. Like,
else saying pillowcase. It must have been the
pillowcase.
set school
It was like
project.
it was like pillowcase, pajama pants. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was like where we started. So and I like, especially if you're trying to sew for other people, because then you're not worrying about size, or like, if I pick this particular size, is my recipient going to be upset because I picked a large as opposed to a small, even though that matched her measurements. So, like, doing things like that. So I have like gloves, simple gloves, or like I said, a headband, or something like that, is, I think, the easiest thing to start with, because it's small, it's usually quick, satisfying, doesn't fitting is not an issue, and it just gets you into making something that's kind of fun. Or like a simple bag,
Yeah.
I think is like the first thing that I thought about. And then when you go into garments, like if you're going to try to make garments, hi Marquita. Say skirts, like to
It's
make a
on my
skirt.
list as well.
Yeah, I'm sure, because and same with pattern cutting too,
Yeah.
because really you only, I mean, it depends. If you're going with a more fitted skirt, then you want to make sure you're fitted through the hips and the waist. But the only fit you can get away with doing, just fitting at the waist. And then it's like a deter, like, fitting, I know, is daunting and can scare people away. And kind of goes along, like, I want to say, sewing with like knit and stretchy fabric for sewing. I know that a lot of people, when they start sewing, they get scared of sewing with knits, but it actually is more forgiving. So you could make, you know, you could make a simple top or a simple dress. There's no closures in knits. And it is tricky to get used to, like, the stretch and what kind of stitch to use and what kind of needle. But if you use a serger, if you have an overlocker, that can really speed things up, and it can be really quick and really satisfying. Fitting is kind of more forgiving, and there's a lot of fun, like, knit things you can do, like a basic tank top dress or like a top. And I experimented a lot with that when I was first starting. So I know that sounds like a not intuitive place to start. Like, you usually start with wovens, but I think that you can still have a lot of fun with knits, and they're actually, like, because it stretches. So if you make it a little too small, it's not going to be the end of the world. Like, it'll still
No,
fit a
actually,
lot of the time.
I hadn't thought of it, but one of the first tops I made was a knit top, and it is quite true, because even if you haven't got overlocker, you can use a zigzag stitch.
Right.
And unless
Right.
you choose a really awful knit, it's just as easy to
Yeah,
stitch.
that is the thing. That's the thing with knits, is there's so many variables when
Yes,
talking about
don't
what
start with
fabric
a
you use.
net chiffon knit or something.
Right. Right. Or something really slinky.
Yeah.
But congrats, Barrett. Just bought the first overlocker. Woohoo!
Fantastic. And somebody Sophie would like to see your gloves again, please.
Oh yeah. So these are, I actually did a free class on how to make these.
Yeah.
It's on Sewing Parts Online YouTube channel. Oh gosh, I forget when it was. I want to say September, maybe.
Yes.
But so
Yeah,
you can still go and check this out. But and this was making the pattern as well. And honestly, I made this up. Like, I was like, I needed Christmas gifts. Again, like I said, accessories are great for gifts because you don't have to worry too much. And then these don't have fingers, so it literally is just like traced my hand.
Because that's what
And
Laura was saying. Gloves easy to stitch. I always thought they'd be fiddly, and I think gloves like that are really
the
easy.
style. Yeah, it
I've got
depends on the
some
style.
vintage books where they show you how to make proper, like,
Yeah,
leather
when
gloves.
you've got the inset and all of that, yeah, that can be very tricky. But this kind of like mittens, or and again, it's with fleece, so it's forgiving with stretch, and that sort of thing. So
No,
I
they
just
look great.
or scarves, scarves
Yeah,
is
I was
just a
just thinking,
rectangle.
what are they called? Like a scarf snoot.
Like
Like a loop scarf.
oh yeah, where it has like buttons, like that's cute.
Or is it just like a ring, like a donut ring?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can do
I think
that, or like infinity
yeah.
scarves are really like an easy thing to learn on. I'm gonna be making some
Snoots.
snoods. Yeah. So I'm gonna be making some like leg warmer, kind of boot warmer things, which is basically a rectangle with with a zipper in it. Somebody gifted to me, so I'm gonna make some of those for Christmas. Just because you don't have to worry too much about size. Is That's why I like accessories. I've made my sister's bags before and things like that.
I agree, and I think it's about the fabric size as well. You can just buy something off the remnant, or
Right.
use like a leftover from a garment you already have. Because if you have big pieces, that's straight away much more work. And
Scary,
Erin
yeah,
is
and
saying it's a
cumbersome.
great beginner tutorial for a scarf in the pattern cutting school. Thank you very much. It's a vignette scarf, and I think it might be a cut on the bias. So, but it's actually really easy and looks really complicated. My mother
Yeah.
did not like it. She's the worst person to get Christmas presents for, because I made
Aw.
Christmas presents, and she was like, "Oh, it's not really me." So I have to make something else this year.
That is the thing, right? Well, and that's why,
Thank you, Erin.
like I
I like
said,
it, but yeah.
well, that's always, I've made stuff for like my other sister and then my older sister. I didn't think it was her style, and then she was jealous that my younger sister
Oh,
got
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's also like, I've got two sisters as well. It's always like a competition.
Like, we'll see. The other thing I was gonna say, which is a knit as well, is I made a beanie, a hat, like a knit hat with the seams. So that was a
You have
simple
lots of fun
pattern.
because you can do the square ones, you can different shape. Oh yeah, because I made bucket hats this summer, and they're
Yeah,
because
bucket hats. Like,
that might be a good sort of project for when you slightly challenge yourself because it's got curves and stuff.
Right, right. So the knit hats again take a really small amount of fabric. I bought a pattern. It was like $5 or something. It's a little bit tricky, but honestly, once you did one, you're like, "Oh, this is super easy," and you got it. And it was minimal seams and they went together really quick, and that's what I made a bunch of my family for Christmas one year.
And I think
So,
what's great about small projects as well, you can make them say 10 times and give them as presents, as Trisha
mhm,
says, or because people will like them. So you start making better people, and that
and
way you get
practice
them
them.
better. And I think that's always in the beginning, if you make something quite complicated and you don't do it as well, which I've done quite a lot, then it puts you off rather than saying, oh yeah, this is a
Yep.
little bit wonky, but it's 90% perfect. Next time in 10 minutes, I can do it even better.
Right.
So it's
I'll
like
do it better.
you get visible success. But if something is just such a disaster, it's just gonna like you will be so low down. It will
Haunt
take
you.
you years
Yeah.
to figure out.
That's one thing I do want to touch on, talking about this because, both of us in our platforms, we deal with people who are new to pattern cutting. And I don't know if this happens for you, but it's so easy to get super excited. You're like, I want to know all of the things. I want to make a three-piece suit, or, I want to make a
Skill
really like
sets. Yeah.
formal gown or something like that when you're starting. And that will come, but like what Charlotta was saying, is it's really important to build those skills and build that confidence, because I know, like, I always have to be like, okay, I know you want to do all the things and I know you want to, and we'll get there. But if you jump right into the deep end, you're likely to get frustrated and confused and give up. And if we like, it's strategic to start with those small wins, and build your confidence. And like you said, like, it's 90% correct and you're like, oh, okay, and then you're going to make another one and make improvements on it right away. So you're improving, and you can see it, and it's quick. You're like, oh yeah, I already did it better. And like, as you're learning, it's so important. Like, that's an important part of learning something, is to get those wins along the way. So I just want to give that.
Yes,
Yay,
and
Sophie. Thank you. She said she joined my YouTube.
there's also some questions we can answer in a second. I was going to say it's also, I think, if you're beginner, complete beginner, it's quite good to make something you're not as passionate about.
Right.
So if it's something you really want, or it's a present, like I used to make bags for beginner projects because it's a really
Mhm.
good way of, it's just like just really simple shopping bags, because you have
Mhm.
to cut out rectangles, which is not perfectly.
Right.
They have the straight seams, you learn about hems, and you stitch on the handle. So you could do it in an
Yeah.
hour, but it's quite satisfying. But I had one student and they wanted to make it for their girlfriend, and they got so upset because it wasn't perfect. And it
Yeah.
was really sad because it was something which he was a fantastic job, but because it was so precious,
Perfect. Yeah.
he was
Yeah,
like
because
really
it was
critical.
precious.
But
Yeah.
if it's something, if you make just some shopping bags, maybe great, they will work. You can, you can put them. But don't put too much pressure on you. But and try out. And somebody, first of all, somebody wanted to know, are you going to do snoot class, Trisha?
Snoot
Julie.
class. I don't know. We'll put it on the list. Julie
Yes.
Julie loves vintage fashion, which Charlotta is wonderful
I
about.
wanted
But
to make some hood classes because I found some
hoods.
fantastic hood patterns
Yeah.
in like a vintage pattern cutting book, but I think that might be a little bit too niche to make sort of different. Because I've seen some recently, some high
Yeah.
fashion labels are doing hoods for this winter. So let me
Yes.
know about the YouTube tutorial, because I was thinking that's a little bit
Yeah.
too niche.
Hoods is one that I'd like to do more of too. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a good one.
because you get
Hoods
lots
and
of,
snoots.
yeah,
We'll put it
fun.
on the list.
It's long, yes. And then
Right.
somebody said, I made some dresses for my niece's teddy bear. And we were actually chatting about it before we went live, because my daughter is just learning to sew. And she's so joyful. She just takes a fabric and she makes an awful garment. Well, not awful, but it's just, you wouldn't be able to move. But she's really happy because it just works. It
Yeah.
looks fun. And I think that's where you just stitch by hand, even machine. And I do the same. I do so quick jumpers, but it
Yeah.
lets you practice because it's such small pieces and they still look great. You might look and say, "Ooh," but they will work, they'll make you
But
happy.
it's
And
building
you
that
can create,
confidence
yeah,
again. It's having fun
Yeah.
while you're doing
And then
it.
next time you do trousers, which might be out of 4 pieces rather than just cut around the legs, stuff like that. But you can have lots of fun like that. And Erin is saying, my dream project is a blazer pattern, but there's so many choices for design elements. I get overwhelmed. Yeah. And I think that's what we both sort of,
Yeah.
the more it's precious to you, the harder it is actually to make it.
Yeah. And something that I heard on a podcast once, I can't remember exactly which one, but they were talking about, how you like to tackle kind of learning different things and introducing different skills, like how do you build up to a blazer, or how do you build up to something more intense like that. And they were saying that they started with a garment with no closures, and then maybe they introduced, like, so it might have been Love to Sew podcast where she said she wanted to introduce 3 new things with every project that she sewed. So like setting in a sleeve would be one thing, or adding a zipper would be another, or doing a collar or understitching, or like thinking about it that way, so that it's not you're just jumping right in and getting lost and frustrated, but you're building on those skills. And I really think that that is an important part to success. It's
Yes.
so exciting. It's like you want to make all the things and you
And
will. And
yeah,
but I think that it's important, like if you want to make a blazer, make maybe a top with a collar, I know Charlotta's got a lot of lovely collar classes. We have collar classes as well in my membership, but it's like, take certain elements that is going to be in that final goal that you want to get to, and see if you can try introducing one at a time and trying them out and getting
you
comfortable
don't
with
care
that,
as much. Yeah.
that you don't care so
Yeah.
much about.
That was
Yeah.
you
And that's
could
why I love mock-ups, because
do,
then you can try it on and you're like, it's a mock-up. If it doesn't work, oh well.
yeah, you could do like a dress with the style lines you think are right. You could make a skirt
Hmm.
with a belt pocket, isn't it? You could make a more simple
Hmm.
tailor jacket. And when
Right.
you start combining it, you see, this is actually work. I love that
Yeah.
place with big shoulders, but I always look like this if I wear shoulders like that. So
The other thing that I like to do is I do this in my own life. Like, I have a lot of Christmas. I've decided I'm making Christmas presents again this year. I don't know why I do this to myself. I'll be hating this decision by like next week when I'm having to do it. But I'm excited about it now. I want to make everybody Christmas presents. So those are going to be, I bought a pattern. I have patterns that I'm going to use. I'm not going to they're going to be quick sews. But then I also have a very complicated project that I'm working on right now. So I always have a couple of things going, where I'll have like a challenging project that I really want to spend time and like go slowly and making sure it's going to turn out exactly the way I want. And then I have other quick things that I'll like do as when I get to a place where I'm like, oh, my brain is kind of mush right now. I don't want to dive into that, or I'm worried about that next step. I want to make sure I'm in the right place with that. Then I'll go and do something quick, and it's like a confidence builder, like what I was talking about in learning. So that's another great way to, like, if you do have something that you're really working towards, to not make that be like your end all be all, that's all you're working on. Like, intermix, some easier confidence palette cleansing projects, I call them, into the mix can help sometimes too.
I think it's also important because sewing and pattern cutting is like cycling. The more you do it or anything, the better you get it. But if you're in a course, you really, even if I done tutorials over summer, I build up tutorials so I can take time off. And then in September, I'm so bad at it again. So I think it's like you don't want to ever have time off, really. And I know Trisha is constantly busy, but if you are, if sewing is your hobby and you make your own clothes, then yeah, always have something just to keep your hands, knowing what they need to do, and just keep on stitching.
Yeah.
So you're always confident in stitching. So when you're working on your important stuff, you're actually like really easy to stitch rather than thinking, oh, I haven't done this for a few months and it's all wobbly and horrible. Good. I can see Trisha's reading.
I was reading Sophie's comment about a video of us talking about how to take a sleeve that fit you, and you want it to fit to another pattern.
I don't think you have. That's
I don't think we
conscientious. Not conscientious. It's quite a. People get very angry
specific.
about it. Yes. It's like a controversial issue, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah. I'm sure Trisha has an amazing trick on making it work.
Well, I'm a big fan. It's funny. I didn't know the term pattern hacking until I came into the online space. But and then Dejanay, she is on TikTok and Instagram. She with Mimi G's book that just came out about pattern hacking, about taking patterns and then changing the designs, which she said it's like the gateway drug to pattern making. And it is. It's like taking a pattern and starting to change the design or switch out sleeves or add collars from one to another, pockets from one to another. Those are, I mean, that's the beginning of pattern making. So if something like that makes sense to you, but yes, it is always a little bit tricky to meld the two sometimes. And so it does sometimes take some knowledge. And people always want to know, and I'm sure you've heard this question a lot. I do as well. In fact, we're teaching a class on it in December in my membership, about taking your sloper that fits you. So I think that's kind of what Sophie was talking about, is you take a sleeve pattern that fits you and using that on another pattern to give you information on whether that pattern is going to fit you or not. That is a tricky thing to explain because every single pattern and every person who drafts patterns drafts them slightly differently. So I do have a class that I'll be teaching in December in my private community, where we're going to talk about how to do that, because that's a common question that comes up. But it's not kind of that cut and dry, because if you're trying to make your pattern that you purchased end up be the same as your sloper that you've drafted yourself or you've made to fit yourself, then that is going to be a more frustrating thing to do than just using your sloper to create the design that you want. So that's kind of getting into like how you draft and how you make patterns go together.
I've done quite a few classes on just how to slightly change the fit of your armor and your sleeve, and it's all related. And like a tiny change when your pattern is even like a relaxed bodice, it's like your armor changes, and when your sloper sleeve doesn't really fit. And it's
especially with sleeves because of how they're shaped.
And also how they're related, because it's not just about the size, it's about the depth and how the armhole depth and all that.
The design and what body it's meant to go on and all of that. Sleeves and pants are probably the two most complicated parts of a garment, as far as like fitting and relation to the other pattern pieces and how they go together. So as far as talking about where to start, I would not start with sleeve pants. Would not be my number first choice of where you start with pattern making.
I worked with a fantastic textile designer for many years, and she just never made anything with sleeves. She just said, I can't approach it. So
I mean, it's definitely worth it's like I said, it's people want to know everything. Like you want to know how to do a suit and sleeves and pants and all the things, but it really, you kind of, to be successful and to have more fun, starting with those particular garments is often going to leave you frustrated and not getting what you're desiring, because there's a lot of levels and layers into how those seams go together and the shapes of those pattern pieces and the outcomes of what you're looking for. So those are why I wouldn't recommend starting there, just because I want you to have fun and enjoy the process and build up to that, to where you're getting to that point and you're like, oh, this makes sense. I can apply what I've learned with these other things to this particular part. But what would you say is your top 3 sewing projects?
Well, I was going to say bag, but I actually really like your accessories more general. And I think knit is a great idea as well. I've forgotten about that. And it also it brings me on to shall we talk drafting projects as well? Yes, because it's quite interesting, because I put a poll out, and Laura, who is in the chat somewhere, she actually, first thing she drafted was a t-shirt pattern. I was like impressed with that. So, but I think if you, for example, I think she has a background in IT. So I think for technical people, actually just learning to draw out a really simple thing like a t-shirt is really good, because you have a technical mind. But again, it's a quick draft, the t-shirt, you have no darts, and then quick to make, and you can as Trisha said, you can really practice your making. Every time you make it, you do a neck bend a bit nicer and stuff like that.
Right. You can
I
build
was
on
going
that.
to say, and I think we're going to have it in common, I would say the first thing I would draft is a skirt, probably. And I would either draft, I've got a YouTube tutorial for this, which I did for exactly that reason, which is a 6-panel skirt.
Yes.
So
I think that was one of the first ones I did in
oh, really?
in costume
Good,
school.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Yes.
curious. I should go check out your video if it was the same way.
It's probably the same one. Yeah, it's literally just you take your the measurement where you want it to sit and your hip measurement, and then you just draw one trapeze shape and you cut it out 6 times. And so the only tricky stitching for that is a zip. But it's sort of a, you don't need to invest in slopers. You don't even have to have a sewing pattern. All you need is your measurements. And it works. It hasn't got too much fitting because it's sort of, it works for nearly everybody. And you can make it wide, you can do design choice. And what's great about, again, like your accessory project, it doesn't take too much fabric. So it's got quite a small pattern piece. You cut out 6 times. Because other skirt at the opposite would be a circle skirt. Because you can make a circle wrap skirt. But the reason I haven't done it as a complete beginner is just because the fabric is really big. So I think that can be a bit off-putting.
I have to say, sewing big voluminous skirts is probably my least favorite thing to sew. Because there's just so much fabric to manage. I'm just like lost in the sea of fabric. I like more intricate like things. But yeah, it's interesting you picked that skirt. And the skirt that I think it is a little bit different. The skirt that we learned to draft when I was in school, in my costume class, it was a more full skirt. It wasn't fitted. It was gored, so it fit at the waist.
I think this is the same. It's like a sort of, it's not full, but it's sort of slightly flat.
Like an A-line. Yeah. Well, and we made it for Renaissance Fair. So it was a long, because then we could wear it somewhere, you know. But yeah, a t-shirt I think would be good to draft it. Or copying, like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, you could copy a t-shirt because that's quite, or copy it actually if you copy a top, you know, like a tank top,
like a knit, like a knit top that doesn't have stretch, I think. And especially with no sleeves, or you know, that is like a really simple thing to start with. You're just tracing around a shape, and you can get there, add seam allowance. I think that's a really quick way. And even drafting a skirt sloper, I mean, if is very basic. It's like, it's, you know, your hips and yes, you've got to place darts and things, but as far as drafts go and fitting wise, it's a pretty simple garment to start with, I think.
And it also, what's nice about, they both have like the t-shirt, like a top or t-shirt and the skirt. They have lots of design choices, so you can make the basic one, and then you say, oh, what happens if I put,
then you start playing with different things.
I put volume, you know, with t-shirt you have lots of options as well, so you can have lots of fun with stuff. Danny is saying flutter sleeves for a good beginner sleeve. And what is it a flared sleeve, Trisha?
It's like taking like when you add fullness into a sleeve, you know, you take like,
end up being a square, basically.
It ends up being like it's usually a hack. That's like one of the first hacks that I'll see people do. I'm trying to find my sleeve pattern, which I think is over here. So it's like you can take a sleeve and where you can slash and open it up, so that it becomes like a wavy.
Oh, like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it becomes more of a circle. It becomes more. It's like creating a circle, but keeping your sleeve head, so you don't have to figure that out. But you can take something that already exists and slash it and manipulate it and change it.
And I think you can do it even. You literally just use half circle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? So you don't even have to.
I think playing with circles is a really fun place to start, especially. I've created a circle cheat sheet, you know, so you don't have to do all the math. But that is a fun place to start as far as drafting. And somebody else, hi Viv, good to see you. And Barrett was asking, I'd love to know the best approach for improving your inside hems. I seem to get so obsessed with a neat finish on the inside that sometimes it can end up too chunky. inside hems.
Yeah, so I get it because it's like as you're getting better, you want like perfect finish, but sometimes it's to know what finish to use so it still works, isn't it? Because like for
Yeah,
example, French hems won't work in a denim, but well, that would be like,
right.
isn't it? I imagine that's what you mean, isn't it? But
Yeah, it ends up being too like you want to neat, like as opposed to overlocking and top stitching, you want to like do a roll hem, and maybe that design doesn't allow, and it could get too thick, in certain areas, maybe too chunky, like they were saying. Um,
yeah, or like maybe just again, that's actually a really good experiment to make the samples because you can just make
yes,
little samples just to. And I think Natalie C Source, she's Instagram. She has great book. She's got a whole book of samples. You have one as well, I think.
I
I'm
do.
not
Yeah, I took a
on that.
class that
Yeah.
that I did it.
But
Yeah.
every time you make a project, I actually I do it more, but every time I do something in a fabric, I say, oh, how does it look in a French seam? How does it look in a bound seam? And you just have to do 5 centimeters, but it will
And
show you
and
straight away what will work.
absolutely, and I'll tell you, that's something that I highly recommend no matter what level of sewing you're at, and doing a mock-up. If you're pattern cutting for the first time, like, and you're scared, you're not sure if it's going to work, like, do it, sew it up out of fabric you don't care about, and try it. And I know a lot of people will try to do wearable mock-ups if that's something that you want to do, but it goes back to that not being too emotionally invested in it when you're learning. It makes it less stressful if it doesn't come out perfect, and that's why I like mock-ups and things like that. Um, and I was gonna say something else on that, but yeah, oh, testing I test everything all the time. Like anytime I'm gonna sew anything under my machines, I'll take a little piece of like the fabric that I want and test out a hem, or test out like just sewing in general. Like, will this be too thick? Like, is the stitch going to be straight going through my machine? Especially with sergers, overlockers, or doing zigzag, always test on my fabric so that it's just a scrap of something that is left over from cutting out. But knowing for sure when I go put my project under the machine that I'm going to have more confidence and more knowledge that it's going to turn out how I want it to turn out.
And I think especially because Bert was saying like for example, rolled hams are really tricky. And I think
Yes.
especially for example, if you're rolling a ham on a curve, you have to do a sample. Just to let
Yes.
you know what
Yeah.
actually works, so you use a facing. Yeah, so I'm a fan of just little samples as well, just to
Mhm.
know what works. I totally agree.
And then
And
I'll tell you something that I do, and maybe you were saying this about projects. You were saying that you keep like if there's a costume project that I'm working on and I did some weird application to the fabric to like make it look a certain way, I will keep my sample in with the pattern. So I do it because years later I'll get people to reorder that costume, if the show is still going on. And so I'm like, what did I do? And how did I do that? And I have that reference to go back to, and then I will test it again and make sure.
yeah, so whatever works, you staple to the pattern envelope, or whether
Hmm.
you actually have a book of samples as well, so you can like refer back to say, oh, for collars, what have I used before for dresses? Yeah. Just have it somewhere in a place where you can easily find it, isn't it? And yeah, and I actually I like to keep scraps as well of everything, so you can then with hair.
Hmm.
That's a different subject.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Or like when I'm
And
going to do a bar tack, on something like if I'm doing jeans or pants or something like that, like testing out. I still do this every time I do a welt pocket. I'll do a practice run of my welt pockets just to make sure I remember how it all goes, and it's like, yeah, so there's nothing wrong with that, and I still do
yeah,
it to this day, and I've
and I
been
think
sewing for a
it's a
long
bit like we said, you should always have something going, something easy. So
time.
that's
Yes.
whenever you're like testing something, it's like you keep like you're reminding your hands on your brain how it works, and then
Yeah.
by the time you're doing a proper one, you already know how it's done, rather than still trying to work it out as you're on your precious fabric, trying to do something good.
And
And sorry.
so you said to start with the skirt. Was
Yes.
that, did you have other?
I was going to say somebody just said with skirts is complicated for if some of you have a narrow waist or a little belly, but I think that's why skirts are great because they're relatively straightforward. So you can, like Erin says, she likes to add volume to the front. So, or you maybe add a yoke just and then add volume. You can have fun with it, and you also work out. You can work out really quickly. Like for example, pleats on a high-waisted skirts works very rarely. You have to be really careful how you layer them. But it's quite easy to see. So unlike a sleeve or bodice with a sleeve or trousers, the skirt issues are pretty straightforward. So you can have
Pretty
fun
obvious, yeah.
and adding stuff and working it out as you do. So I think that's a great one. I was going to say my other one is collars because you're wearing one and I'm wearing one. And I think
that's what I was going to say too.
That goes back to pattern hacking as well, because you can use a sewing pattern, a commercial pattern, if you've got your stopper, and you can add it on. And again, it's a small piece of fabric. It's a small draft, so it's like a big
it's a quick draft too, usually.
Yeah, like something like your flat collar, or is it a flat collar? Or has it got
it's a shawl collar. Yeah, it's not a shawl collar. Yeah,
shirt collar. Yeah, so it's a really nice small piece of fabric. Small piece of
paper.
Yeah,
I used this with scrap that I had left over. Made it. I think I drafted and made 2 collars in like an hour.
And you don't need many measurements, and all you need is neck measurements, is most of them. Yeah. So, Erin is saying collars have been a great beginner project for me, and you can even. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say it's a really nice way to like change the look up of a design of a top. You know, I have a lot of people who will do like the little Peter Pan colors for like Wednesday Addams for Halloween, you know, and add a cuff, you know, and there you go. Add it to a shirt that already exists, or put a tie. I know Katie Cortman made some like collars, some really nice bright colorful collars, and she had just a tie here. So it doesn't really have to be fitted. Like this isn't super fitted to me. I don't even have to add it to a shirt, you know, like it can be something that you add on just as an accessory. So it kind of goes that accessory thing, but I think it's a really fun way to add something more to a pattern that you already have.
It can be separate, or you can literally just measure the neckline on an existing garment, you know, under the seam, and then you add it on. Lots of fun, quick. Again, small, cheap to make, quick to make. So yeah, I totally agree. And there's lots of tutorials out there, some by me, but lots for others as well. Maybe I love the shawl collar, but the shawl collar is a full draft because
that's a little bit more complicated.
That'd be the next step where you're actually learning to draft, but it's still adding.
Dorothy wants to see your collar more up close.
It's a funnel neck, so it's like a vintage.
Hi, Sophie.
But it's cut on the bias, and it goes. So it's like a normal row collar, but it has the V-neck instead. So you can have lots of it's great for vintage or sportswear.
It's cute. I like it. So that's a fun one for sure.
Yes, but I think any actually a roll collar is a really nice one. That's sort of Jackie Kennedy, isn't it? Or shirt collar is nice. All of these are fun. And the last thing I was gonna say, thank you, Bert. And that's actually, you know how Trisha was saying it, she tests everything. And this fabric I've made lots of, but I've never had to truly pattern match it. And when I was pattern matching, I realized it's actually got a bit of because wool is quite spongy, isn't it? It gives. It's a pain.
To line
right down my center front, and it's one thread out, and I notice every time I look at it. Nobody else will notice it, but I can.
think it looks lovely, but that's one thing is probably not the first.
Yeah. Don't use
matching stripes and plaids is probably not the best thing to start with, because you'll make it like small prints, because those, even if they're not matching, it doesn't, like when you get into bigger prints, it's more obvious.
I think it's even better. Anything sort of irregular, like you lovely, that's a leopard, isn't it? Something.
Yeah, this is actually a Mimi G fabric. I have a pair of pants out of this, and this was left over from that pants, and I love it. I mean, I just like the colors.
It works every direction, because I think that's you just want something.
It's not right. So if you're picking patterns, like look for something small that's kind of like all different the bigger the print, the harder it's going to be to hide any unmatching. And that is definitely a sign that you'll see, with people who are starting out, to see patterns not matching or stripes not matching. That's something that you'll learn to finesse as you do more. But
And you still forget sometimes, because it's the whole thing how it moves around the body. I still sometimes look at stuff and I'm saying, I think, oh yes, you forgot about the sightseeing or something.
right, yeah, thinking about that for
Yeah.
sure.
Or it's always
For
like
sure.
one piece you completely like just had enough. And I was going to say the next thing I was going to say, once you've done like a skirt or collar, but I would then do it when you sort of, I think it's quite fun to actually dive into your bodice. And again, you can use an existing sewing pattern with a dart. You just need to take the seam allowance off and extend your dart tip to the actual bust point.
Point.
And then it's sort of quite fun, maybe changing a dart into a seam. Lots like so quite easy ones, but again, you can really change the design, but you still know it will fit you. If it's a sewing pattern you made before, the fit stays the same. You just have different style lines,
Yeah,
or adding
adding
a
different style
yoke,
lines.
that sort of stuff. But going inside a pattern, I think at some point that's sort of quite good fun, and working from there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It kind of goes back to what we were saying, is like pattern hacking or changing up existing patterns is a great place to start if pattern cutting or pattern making is new to you, because and that's why I like to start by learning the rules of pattern making, like moving a dart and adding different fullness, and then going into contouring, because those rules apply to every pattern. So you can always move a dart, and you can always, like, no matter what pattern you're using, all of those principles apply. So have fun with trying different things, using a pattern that you already know fits you. Another great adjustment, if you have a pair of pants that you've made that you love, changing up like the leg width, making it a wide leg pant or a flare, or turning it into a more fitted pant leg. Same thing with skirts. If you have a skirt that fits, can you add a little bit more flare to it, or shape it in a little bit more to your body, especially like with knits. Like I said, I think you can really go a little bit more, be more adventurous with knits, because they are more forgiving. And then there are some things that get more complicated, but trying to just tweak things that you already have. I actually have a freebie that I give away a lot of times, like the 5 pattern hacks that everybody should know, because I really feel like that takes your fear away of, like, I have to sew this exactly the way that it was intended. And that's not the case. We're rebels. We're rebels here. If we like to sew, we like to make things the way we want to make them. So, um, take like think that becoming a successful pattern maker or a successful stitcher is stepping into that power of that you have that power, that it is okay for you to push those boundaries and push those designs in, and taking them in different directions, and just have fun playing with it. But the more that you learn about it, like, the more adventurous you can get. So I think that that's a great place to start, like starting with something that already fits, and trying to
Yeah.
do like the flutter sleeve. Like, that is a good hack to start with. That's really fun.
And also things like changing the legs of your trousers, and that will actually sort of teach you like how it affects fitting. So that's
Mhm.
a really gentle way of saying, oh yes, so I've had these really lovely tight trousers and I added pleats just at the front. Something strange will happen at the back.
Yeah.
Um, but it's sort of where you actually learn, but it's not a complete failure. It's just sort of something goes a bit wrong. But when you understand why it is, rather than trying to draft a sloper and trying to do more complex fitting, I
Yeah.
think if you sort of hack your patterns, you realize what
You're gonna
doesn't work.
learn.
You
Yeah.
learn a lot of it quite
Thanks.
intuitively, and just through
Thanks,
seeing, you
Kat. Good to
understand
see
what's
you.
gone
She's
wrong.
gonna watch the replay. Yeah, so I think that that's a fun way to start. So all of that is really good. I was gonna say also a loose, like a loose dress, but I'm that was more sewing, like sewing, and I know, like, when you introduce different closures, those can be scary. Buttons, zippers, things like that. Like an invisible zipper, I think, even though I don't use them very often, they're pretty, like, as far as patterning goes, like, it's pretty, the seam allowance is there. Where
Yes,
does the
it's
zipper
really
go in?
straightforward.
Yeah. So using things that are like pullover things where you don't have closures, like something that is loose fitting, oversized, that kind of stuff
But
is
actually,
more fun.
loose dress is quite nice because you can just
Yeah,
trace around an existing top, and as long as you make the neck big enough, then you can just put it on. And I was looking through my vintage books and saying what do I recommend, and a lot of it is just like a little shift dress or something like a shift top, and then you can practice different hems, like you said, like you learn new skills with each garment. So
right.
a shift top in a woven, you can learn how to do a nice inside hem bird, like a nice
Hmm.
French seam if you really wanted to, or how to do a facing, stuff like that. How do you finish your facing? And
And
then you can do more.
with starting with the dress, even if let's say it is a more fitted dress and you have a zipper, I think a dress is easier than going into something with sleeves or a pair of pants. Like I think that with because again, usually past a certain point, especially if the skirt has a flare, you're only worried about fitting on the bodice. And you're not dealing with sleeves and you're not dealing with like going in between the legs and all the complications that come with that. So I think the bodice is the best place to start for, and even for men as well, like starting with a basic shirt and then moving into what you can do with that shirt. Men's clothes get very complicated very quickly unless you are going into knits, because then you've got to have a collar and you've got to have sleeves and then a cuff and then there's buttons, if you're doing like most men's wear. But if you have like a polo shirt, like you said, then it's a collar, something pulled over,
Yes,
but that's
yeah, yeah.
oversized. So yeah.
Yeah, I've always found men's wear far more tricky. Yeah, because you can do like pajama pants, but even
Right,
yeah,
pajama pants. Yeah,
but it's
pajama
like
pants are
right
good.
away, like it's not that straightforward, is it, with men? Yeah. So like, yeah, I think
I do want to, because I think I saw Sandra had joined us in the beginning, and I posted about this. So this is a little shrug. I don't know if you guys can see. But this is it's just sleeves that are attached.
I love it.
It's made out of wool. And it was like a sleeve pattern. There's no hem on it because it was wool and it wasn't going to fray. And I made this really quick because I was wearing like a sleeveless something for New Year's Eve and it was cold. And so I was like, I'm just going to make like a little shrug. And so it's like a sleeve, that continues up, and there's a seam. I think it's been a while since I made this. There's a seam in the center back. And then there's a seam under the arm. So that was just kind of me playing around. Like, I don't even know if I really drafted. I probably just drew it. I may have done like a little sample or something. But I think I just want to encourage you to, we're saying, be careful, don't jump right in and want to make a three-piece suit, and sleeves and pants maybe might not be the most fun to start with, even though you want to get there. But also, I don't want you to be afraid to
No,
try things. Like that's how you learn the best, like the quickest is you can it does have a sleeve seam. So it is a sleeve. So it is a sleeve. Sorry. I couldn't remember. It was a sleeve. And then the back is a straight piece, but it actually like comes down here like this.
actually, one thing we haven't mentioned, which I used to do a lot when I started out, is just buying stuff from like a Goodwill store, what we call charity shops in UK, and cutting it apart. Because I
Hmm.
think if you buy something, they're quite expensive now, but like if you buy something for £1 or two, you
Yeah.
can chop them together. As you said, like, because I was thinking they used to sell what your shrug to wear underneath, sort of short sleeve winter stuff, and they were like tights. Because if you cut a pair of tights in half,
Hmm.
leaving
Yep.
it attached just at the crotch. So if you
Yep.
basically cut off the top area, you end up with a similar sort of thing. You
Yep.
cut off the
Yep.
feet.
I've
So it's
seen
the same
people
thing.
do
You
it
could
with like
buy a pair of,
fishnet,
hmm?
with a pair of fishnets. Like
Oh
you can
yes,
cut out the crotch and put the head in, and then the waist
oh
can be
yes,
like,
yeah.
and then
So
you
it's
wear the
not so
legs.
clear.
Yeah.
But you could just buy some tights, and what happens if you
Mhm.
cut out, or buy some t-shirts, and chop two t-shirts together and stitch it, and yeah, have some fun. And I think
Or
it's so.
if you have like a garment that is dying, that is like disintegrating, I've had that happen before, like taking it apart and copying that as a pattern and putting it back together. Like, I think copying patterns sounds more complicated than it is. I mean, and you can do it without taking the garment apart, especially for like a knit tank top or a knit like a t-shirt or something that doesn't have a dart, because you can get it to lay flat. When you start introducing darts and you have linings and different seams and things like that, it does get harder to copy, but you can do it. But starting with more simplified garments. But yeah, I mean, I'm still an avid thrifter, charity shop visitor. And in fact, I have plans on going this weekend to find some fabric for my Christmas presents, because I think that will be a good place to look for stuff.
And again, I think it's like one last thing is to not buy really expensive fabric, because if you have a fabric, for £20 a meter, you're going to be really precious about it.
And that's a great thing for like charity shops and Goodwill shops and stuff, is sheets, like garments that are like voluminous, that you can use the fabric for that. But like sheets and draperies and things like that, using that for mock-up or test fabrics is really great.
And I like buying like garments, like even if it's menswear, and when you take it apart and you see how everything works, and when you can use the fabric like kilts or jackets, you can have lots of fun.
And honestly, I learned a lot. Nobody likes to do alterations. I am the first person to say, but I learned a lot by doing alterations in the theater. We have to do that a lot. And I learned a lot by doing alterations on clothing, on taking things apart, seeing how they were put together, and then having to put them back together the same way is a really great way to learn how things go together. By taking them out and doing those alterations. So I took this off because Sandra's asking me. She really wanted to know about what this is.
Center back.
So here's the sleeve, just the sleeve. So it does have, and it's so hard because it's black, but it does have like the sleeve cap, and then there's the right here is the underarm seam. So I don't know if it's been a while since I've used this, and it's even a little stretched out for me wearing it. So I don't know.
I think, Trisha, let me get my sleeve pattern. I
started with this.
I think you can, if you just extend this out, isn't it?
Well, like there's a seam here. There's a cap. Yeah, the cap is here.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting, because I've seen some where it's literally just this extends
where you just extend it, but there is no seam in the back. So this is the back piece.
You literally just chopped off the top of the back, basically.
I probably just did a rectangle, although this is the bottom, because this is where the seam is. So it went straight across the bottom, and then the top, I kind of angled it a little bit. See how it connects to the I'm trying to like figure out, and it's black, so it's not, of course, showing up very well. Here we go. So see how it kind of like curves down from there. But honestly, I don't have memory of how I did it, because I did it so quick. It was like an afterthought. I had done this big complicated Shingo Sato pattern actually for this, and it was sleeveless, because it was all about these like 3D boxes like around the neck, and so it was a super complicated pattern. And then I was like, I'm gonna be cold, I've got to go stand outside. So I like threw this together. So this is just an experiment, honestly, that I've just kept around. But again,
you can have fun copying. And what happens if you make that back really big, so it becomes like a collar nearly?
Like absolutely. I can add a collar to this thing. I mean, but yeah, I know Sandra was talking about it, because she was saying she's, it works great, because like I'm just wearing a camisole with this. But you can, if you're somebody who gets hot and cold all the time, and I know, like, especially in the fall and in the spring, you're like, it's too hot to wear this, but it's too cold to wear this. And so I like to do a lot of layering, and like what you were saying, like to wear something like this, like sleeves like this, like under a sleeveless dress, so that you had that. And this is really great. So if you're if you're like worried about being cold, but you don't want to wear a full jacket, you can wear this and then take it off if you need to. Or like I can wear this thin top. It's pretty cold here today. I would wear a jacket if I was spending a lot of time outside, but I'm warm enough. And this is wool. This is really wool. So it is fairly warm. Um, because that was what I was using it for. But it was a thrown together a thing that I don't even remember what I did. But I was like, I want sleeves and I need it to be attached in the back. I do know that I crocheted. One of the first things I crocheted was like a set of sleeves like this. And again, it's just having
That's
fun with
right.
it.
Yeah. Yes,
There's
totally.
no rule. You're the boss. You're the
Yeah.
boss when you're making your patterns. You can make it whatever you
I
like.
crocheted the bikini once. I've gotten it.
Ah, yes,
But yeah,
yes.
you just literally try it out, isn't it? Like you have a fun with it. Wonderful. And yeah, and Julie is saying I found a silk 1920s dress where it's about to shred and save to copy it. But I think,
Yes.
like, if it's about to fall apart, save it, have a look inside, stuff, find out how it
And
was.
I'll
Yeah.
say, like going back to knits being a fun thing, and I know we're saying like maybe stay away from sleeves and pants and things like that. But if you are going to explore in that world, like doing an oversized pair of like pajama pants is really, anything that doesn't have to be super fitted is going to be more your friend. And I have a friend, and I know Sandra just did this, where she had a bunch of t-shirts that she loved, but like they were all short sleeves, and she's like, I want longer sleeves. So I had a bunch of black cotton knit that I was like, I don't know what to do with all this. It was left over from a costume project. And she's like, can I have some? And she just made like long sleeves. So she found a sleeve pattern that worked for her, and she just cut sleeves and sewed them into her t-shirt to give herself long sleeves. And she'll see, every time I see her, she's like, I've got my sleeves. Like it's a different t-shirt, but she's got sleeves. So, just find one thing, like a collar or sleeves or, t-shirts, and then something that you feel like is fun and easy and something that you can do, and then maybe make a bunch of them and try changing different things up and playing with it. Like I really think that it's important to, like I said, you can have maybe a more serious project that you're like, I really am going to dig into this and like do all the fancy things. But then I'm going to have like some fun things that are just quick and knock them out. And it's really, I think, important to build that confidence and continue as you're trying to learn more complicated things, because it's really easy to get frustrated. It still happens to this day, for me, for my stitchers, for people that I know. And so it's like, don't get too hard on yourself. It's part of sewing.
Part
Unfortunately,
of life, maybe as well.
it's part of life, right? So, and then one thing that I always say to my students, I was just saying this in our PMA live the other day, our Facebook group. um if you're finding yourself in a position where you're struggling with fitting, with sewing, and you're just like, why won't it work? And you're like, keep trying different things, you seam rip it, you try it again, and it still is just not working. My best advice is to step away. Like, go and do an easy project, go watch some of your favorite silly TV, go for a walk, like do something, go eat pie, something completely unrelated, because
If you're
when you get
British, have a cup of tea.
have a cup of tea break. That's a perfect time. Step away, because the more that you try to force when you're in that frustrated energy, it's just going to make it harder and harder and harder. And it could be some simple thing that like you're just not, it's not coming to you because you're like, it must work. And I will tell you, that has saved me so many times. I'm just like, and that's why I like to have a couple different projects, because I'm like, this isn't working. You know what? Or work on a simpler part of that garment, like, or do a test, of it on something that doesn't matter, because it becomes so stressful and it becomes so important, because you're like, this has to work. I'm invested in this. I've done so much work to make this thing happen. And you're not coming from a place of clarity where the solutions will come to you. And oftentimes taking that break, stepping away from it, when you come back to it, you're like, oh, if I would try this. Or, sometimes machines just have bad days, and it's like, give them a rest. They get tired too. And then you come back and you're not as frustrated. So you're able to kind of troubleshoot a little bit easier.
Yeah. No, I think it's not too. It should be fun in the end. So don't back yourself into a corner. It's sort of
Yeah, yeah,
step
absolutely.
back. And there will
Well,
always
this
the
was
next day there will be a solution. But I think that's a wonderful place to finish, Trisha, as we've been going for an hour.
yes,
And
I know, I can't believe it. It always goes so fast with us.
and it's fun as well. So the best thing. And we won't be back in December because we just realized, you're busy. Our schedules are too busy, but we'll be back at the end of January. We might have something really exciting for you. We can't yet
We
talk
have to
about
find
it.
out more about
I
it.
did not find that, but yes.
But yeah, we do this so just so if you guys are new to us and you've just found us, we Charlotta and I have been doing this. We really enjoy just talking about pattern making and sewing and nerding out with all of you. So we've kind of made it a monthly thing regularly. We go back and forth between channels. So in January, it'll likely be on my channel. It would be my turn. So it's great if you're following both of us. And like I said, we're taking December off just because the holidays, and we figure you guys are busy too. We couldn't make it work with the dates, but we'll be back in January. And so if you're enjoying this chat, look forward to, we do this monthly, and it's either going to be on one channel or the other, and we usually try to let you guys know. So yeah, come
Yeah.
back and join us.
Yes, please. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and we see
Yes,
you in January. Bye,
yes.
Trisha.
Thank you. Bye bye.